In the Scholars Chair tonight is Dr. Zainab Alwani, Assistant Professor of Islamic Studies at the School of Divinity, Howard University in Washington, D.C. She received her Ph.D. in Islamic Science and Jurisprudence from the International Islamic University in Malaysia. Our discussion: are the images of violence towards women on television a reflection of true Islam, or are they misleading? And how does the Quran, the holy book of Muslims, regard women? Tonight, at Focus, Quranic concepts of gender equality. Welcome to the Scholars Chair, Dr. Alwani.
Thank you.
Listen, I was reading your paper and I discovered that you made an assertion that Muslims believe in God. If I said to you that Muslims believe in a God that's different than the Jews or Christians, what would be your response?
First of all, I will start with people ask the ultimate questions. Mm-hmm. Who's God? And when we go to the Quran, the answer usually comes to tell us more about God. Especially starting with chapter 1, chapter 2, and in every chapter you will find more about God. So God in this case reveals himself in every aspect. All the attributes, maybe for Muslims it's known as 99 attributes of God. Mm-hmm. But what are those attributes? What does it mean? For us, of course, it represents God. Mm-hmm. He's the most merciful, most gracious, generous, and more and more. Mm-hmm. And he is the creator. Mm-hmm. So in this case, usually when I teach my students, the Christians and the Jews, I ask them always to go start with the Quran, mm-hmm. ask your question, whatever question you have, and then have this dialogue with the Quran mm-hmm. directly, without even someone to be interfering between you and the book of God.
Yes, I have always read the Quran and understood that the God of Jesus Christ and God of Moses, the God of Abraham, was the same God. Mm-hmm. And I was always under the impression that we, as Christians, Jews, and believers, are worshiping the same God, mm-hmm. the God, Allah, as the Arabs yes. would say it, right? There are also some ideas that are bad ideas regarding Muslims, that Muslims worship Muhammad. Mm. Is that something that's true or not?
Mm. Again, I guess this is also another questions mm-hmm. people they ask under the ultimate questions mm-hmm. about the prophets and messengers. Mm-hmm. And according to the Quran, mentioned, of course, he is the creator. God is the creator. And everyone else he sends because he loves humanity. He loves the human beings. So he sent them every time that maybe they forgot about their creator. So he kept sending them different prophets and messengers. Mm-hmm. So when it comes with Muhammad, he's just one of the prophets. Mm-hmm. And he is the final prophet. And he himself, even Muhammad himself, mm-hmm. he announced it with a very nice, he had this nice hadith mm-hmm. about when people ask him about his position among the other prophets and messengers. And he said, look at the house. If there is a house, mm-hmm. and it's complete and beautiful, and people are looking around and they're telling us about how beautiful this house is, and then I'm like the last brick mm-hmm. of that house. So in this case, he is just as a prophet and messenger as Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and other prophets and messengers.
Well said. So Muhammad would not be an object of worship for Muslims as we would worship God. I want to also ask you about the Quran and see if there is an idea that would cause a Muslim to read the Quran and reject the truths of the Torah or the Bible. And in other words, if a Muslim is a believer in the Quran, would they by necessity dislike, hate the Torah or the Bible?
It's one of the pillars of Muslims' faith. They cannot be Muslims without believing in all the messengers and prophets and their books, scriptures. So it is one of the conditions for any Muslim to be a Muslim is to believe in the previous scriptures. But at the same time, the Quran itself, and that's, again, it's having this kind of dialogue with the people of the book. And he called them people of the book, people of knowledge, people who knows God. So in this case, that's when you have this concept, people of the book, it means he invites them to have this intellectual dialogue within the Quran. So that's why most of the time with my students, I refer them and tell them always, go to chapter 5. Maybe it's you will find this very strong argument. It comes from God. And try to understand, try to open that dialogue and try to respond to the questions and the arguments that you have in the chapter.
Yes. In the Quran itself.
In the Quran, within the Quran.
Yes.
And it's amazing when they come back themselves and they read the surah maybe more than 2 or 3 times, is just to find the answers. It's not only to set an argument, but the reality is also because Quran challenges the people. It's not only the people of the book. It challenges Muslims. It challenges everyone, the readers, because it's a book. So that's why we have to have this intellectual dialogue. But at the same time, I really always also, as when I invite the Muslims to have the intimate relationship with the Quran, I also call my students, the Christians and the Jews, to have the same relationship. And maybe you will find something it's missing.
That's great. That's a great approach. Dr. Alwani, what is al-Tawheed and what does it mean in terms of gender equality? Our program is about gender equality.
Tawheed is an essential concept in Islam. And to believe in one God is very simple. It's not that complicated, but at the same time, yes, we do maybe have historical arguments regarding this issue, but this is something different. The reality is, any Muslim, you ask him, it's the first thing, the first testimony that for the Muslims is to believe in one God. Not only, in fact, especially in chapter 2, when God himself, he created Adam, and this is the story of creation. It's there in the Quran that's mentioned what? It's to believe in one God. But at the same time, you, as a human being, you are, and maybe this is again, you are representing, and this is that you are the representative of God on this earth. So I created you not just to be there, but for a mission. And this kind of mission is for both of you. And amazingly, with the gender also relations, when it comes in the Quran, in chapter 4, the first verse of the chapter itself, the name, the title of the chapter is The Women. And the first ayah, the first verse of the chapter is calling us that God created us from one soul, men and women. And in chapter 2, verse 30. It's again, we go back and forth in that you have the same mission, both of you. There's no way for one gender to accomplish this mission successfully without the other one. So in this case, we come together to work together to serve God on this earth. And this is, I guess, that the ultimate mission for human beings.
That's a wonderful idea, a wonderful concept. Where are you from, Dr. Alwani?
Originally, I came from Iraq.
And you did you go to school there?
I was in the middle school when I left Iraq. And I left Iraq also for a reason. My father was someone who was involved in politics, and he was against the government and the regime at that time. So he left the country, and we had to leave after he left maybe 5 years.
What was it like being educated in Malaysia?
In Malaysia, it was only one station of my journey, I guess. My journey took different stations, and it's just because of our situation and circumstances. So we traveled around the Muslim world, and in every time in Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Sudan. So I stopped in many stations, and Malaysia was my final, I guess.
Well, I am glad you made it to the shores of the U.S. so I could have this interview with you. How do you deal with the issues of domestic violence in the Muslim community? We get reports, not daily, but often, to raise your attention to the issue that domestic violence is real in the Muslim community. Could you perhaps confirm that, and what are we doing about it?
First of all, domestic violence is not only related to Muslim community. It's a global issue, and it's this phenomenon, and it's very well known in every research that you read about domestic violence. So it's not something really restricted to Muslim community or of the Islam or anything with even racial issue or something. But it's still, when I came here, with my sisters, especially at the center, the Islamic center and the mosque, we found many of our sisters complaining about their relationship, marital relationship. And at that time, maybe you try to find the answer to help them to also try to connect with their families, and if they have, and as you know, some of the immigrants here, they live by themselves, it's just with their husbands, without their families. So they come to the mosque or to the center, Islamic center, for help and for also emotional support. So later we really we found it's more than us to help them, but we have to also try to involve the imams, the people of the leadership in the mosque. They have to be involved, because this is not only to solve the problem by giving them some kind of temporary answer, but the husband should be also involved in this. So we really started from the beginning to deal with this issue. And apparently what we did also, we educate the women themselves about their roles in Islam. They have to understand, because most of the time when it comes with domestic violence, some